Assalamualaikum and a very good morning, everyone. Welcome to Razak School of Government 9 webinar. Today's webinar is called The Future is Flatter. Before we get started, I would like to go over a few housekeeping items and the structure of our webinar session today. To those who follow this webinar through Zoom, please mute your microphones. We are also broadcasting this webinar live on our Facebook. This webinar session is divided into 3 segments. First, we will begin with key questions posed to our guest speaker. Then, we will answer questions from participants. At any time during the webinar, you may submit your questions to the guest speaker. Just type your questions in the chat and comment section. Please keep your question short and straightforward. As time allows, we will address as many questions as possible. Lastly, we will then wrap up today's webinar session. This webinar is recorded and you will be able to access this recording via our Facebook and YouTube page. Without further ado, I would like to introduce our guest speaker. Professor Dr. Eko Prasojo studied and earned a bachelor's degree in public administration at Fakultas Ilmu Sosial dan Ilmu Politik Universitas Indonesia in 1995. He then continued and earned a Master of Public Administration from the German University of Administrative Sciences, Speyer, the Speyer Postgraduate Program for Public Administration in year 2000, and earned a doctorate at the same place in 2003. Professor Dr. Eko Prasojo is the youngest professor at the faculties. He earned the title professor when he was 33 years old. In 2019, he received the prestigious Habibie Award for his contribution to social and political knowledge. In the same year, he became the third Asian to receive the Braben Lecture Award. He is a public policy specialist at the Department of Administrative Sciences, FISIP Universitas Indonesia. In addition, he is also an expert in collaborative governance, administrative reforms, and human resources in the public sector. Professor Dr. Eko, let us get started. The first question to the guest speaker is, why is bureaucracy important to government? Professor Eko?
Good morning, Pak Johari. Thank you very much for introducing me to the participants. It is my honor to be here to share experience and knowledge to the participants coming from Indonesia and also from Malaysia. The first question was, why is the bureaucracy very important for the governments? Because the bureaucracy is the engine of developments. So the bureaucracy has responsibility to deliver policy made by the governments and also to deliver public services, the excellent public services to the citizens. So bad or good, a government actually will be characterized by the accountability, the efficiency, and also the effectiveness of bureaucracy in a government. So that's why bureaucracy is very important to make sure that all mandated in the constitutions effectively implemented and delivered to the citizens. So, but it is not easy to create a professional bureaucracy, because bureaucracy is working with the political interests, political interference. So, for example, in Indonesia, also in some other developing countries, bureaucracy is always co-opted and also interference by the political parties and political interests. So becoming professional is not easy for the bureaucracy, but we should always make the bureaucracy independent, neutral, by introducing, for example, merit system and also professionalism in the bureaucracy. This is maybe the short answer why the bureaucracy is very important, Pak Johari and dear participants.
Thank you, Professor Eko. What we could gather from the first response is that bureaucracy is necessary to execute the policy.
Yes.
And of course, there are challenges, among others, the political interference in executing the policy. Professor Eko, allow us to move to the second question. How would flatter be better for government?
Thank you very much, Pak Johari. I think the strategic environmental ecosystem has been changing. Yeah, the organizational paradigm is also changed. So we need speed and responsiveness in executing, implementing the policy to the citizens. The bureaucracy should be flexible, yeah, but also oriented to the result and productivity. That's why the questions, how should we flatter the bureaucracy better for the governments? I think the flatter is the better, yeah, because it means that the decision making made by the government should be shorter and also fast, yeah, to make sure that all the public services could effectively implemented and also fulfill the expectation of the citizens. Yeah. And also with the development of advanced technology like ICT, nanotechnology, robotic technology, biotechnology, and other advanced technology, the virtual integrations of organization would be easily, yeah, to integrate all business process, vertical integrations, and also to improve, yeah, the capability of human resources, so handling with the problems faced by the citizen as well as faced by the governments. So I think this is the answer why we need flatter bureaucracy in the governments, because the changing of ecosystem of the governments and bureaucracy. So we need agility in the new era, Pak Johari and dear participants. The nature and the scale of the global trends and shift are forcing the public sector organization to be agile. That means moving toward to a flatter structure, striving more quality and opportunity, yeah, sharing strong vision and purposes among agencies, yeah, between national governments, provincial, and also local governments. So in short, that we can say that agility is needed to help the public sector effect a major transformation, to seize opportunities and to achieve its objective. While agility is not an end and in itself, it is a prerequisite for being truly strategic. So it means that we need agile team. Agile team means that teams in organization are structured differently compared to traditional hierarchical organization. They are cross-functional, share a strong purposes, commit to each other to deliver, and also can deliver end-to-end course value. Cross-functional teams members retain their autonomy in their respective area of focus and set their own work pace and supervise their own activities. However, they're expected to collaborate and leverage from each other's skill set, yeah, to achieve the desirable outcomes in the development, in the government, and as well in public service delivery. This is my answer, Pak Johari.
Thank you, Professor Eko. What we gather is that the changes in the external environment require the bureaucracy to be more agile, to be responsive to the needs of the people in particularly. And there could be some reorganization required, such as cross-functional team, some level of autonomy for people, for the bureaucracy itself to respond, to be more agile, to respond to the external environment. Professor Eko, the last question from RSOG is that how can we flatten the bureaucratic structures?
Yeah, this is a very important questions. Yeah. So I think there are 4 prerequisite transformation in public sector organization, yeah, in the bureaucracy, in the governments, to flatten. Yeah. One is structural transformation. So means that we have to restructure, reorganize the organizational structure in the governments from what we call functional base or function base into the performance base organization that focus on achieving the performance indicator of organizations. So we restructure, for example, the in Indonesia we call S1, yeah, S1 3, S1 4, into the functional structure that more compatible with the performance indicator, with the capability and competence of civil servants, in order to achieve more efficient and also effective of performance in the governments. This is what we call structural transformations. So in short, we can say that performance-based organization is needed, yeah, to be more responsive to the expectation of citizens, to be more capable, so in doing their job. Yeah. So what we call the network governance or flat organizations. So we move from what we call a hierarchical model into the squad model. Squad model consists of various competence of civil servants doing and sharing outcome of performance with their own competence, but integrated in the task and also assignment. This is what we call structural transformations into the network governance or performance-based organizational structure. More agile, but also capable organization. The second one is what we call digital transformations. So with technology that I mentioned before, the business process in organization will be shorter, we will be efficient, more efficient, also more effective, yeah, and also can be also integrated, yeah, into one single platform, digital platform of the governments, so that the people can access easier the public service from the smartphone or from the Android, yeah, like online shopping, yeah, that we already did, yeah, for 3 or 4 years, yeah, that we can go shopping online. Yeah. So this is what we call digital transformation. The third, of course, cultural transformations. So change the mindset, culture set, values, yeah, mental model of the public servant, but also the people and link with new governments, yeah. Because structural transformation and digital transformation without cultural transformation maybe could also cause the corruptive behavior, yeah, in the bureaucracy itself. And the fourth transformation is, I think, the regulatory reform. So we have to re-regulation or deregulations, yeah, from the normally in the over bureaucratization in the bureaucracy and over hierarchy in the bureaucracy has been caused by the over regulations. So that's why re-regulation and deregulation is very important in order to make bureaucracy more efficient and also flatter. This is, I think, prerequisite into the flatter public sector organizations with the four transformations we need: structural, digital, cultural, and also regulatory transformations. Thank you very much, Pak Johari and dear participants.
Thank you very much, Professor Eko. We have started to receive questions from participants, Professor Eko. I would like to read question from Mr. Wahyudi. The question reads, how secure are this use of IT and big data in streamlining the bureaucracy in the third world countries?
Yeah, this is very challenging question, yeah. Yeah. No one can make sure that the technology being used in the transformation is secure, yeah. Because in the technology, always they are also advanced technology. What we can do is that we have to make sure that all technology used by the governments can be protected by the system that we install, but also by the agencies. Yeah. So, for example, the cyber agencies for national security and something like that, but also protected by develop the capability of civil servants in managing and using technology, ICT, and also other advanced technologies. Yeah. So this is very dynamic changes in the world. Yeah, by using ICT, nobody can make sure that all ICT being secure. What we can do is only establish the cyber agencies, yeah. So developing the capabilities of civil servants, yeah, in managing and using the IT. Thank you, Pak Juari.
Thank you, Professor Eko. Another question from the participant, from Dr. Raymond Maiden. Are we viewing bureaucracy negatively? Corporates are also bureaucratic. Should it be about a mindset change and encouraging intrapreneurship?
Yeah, bureaucracy is always characterized by slow response, delaying the services, red tape, corrupt, and so on. Yeah. But originally, Max Weber wrote that bureaucracy is ideal types for the organizations, yeah, with several ideal type of organizations. But when it is implemented or practiced, bureaucracy are facing the culture in the country. So I think because of the culture that exists in the nation or in the countries, the ideal type of bureaucracy has been slowly changed. Yeah, what we call hierarchy into the hierarchies. So hierarchy is better. Yeah, it's good, or a span of control, command, and so on. But hierarchies is organization that characterize too much hierarchy. So the slow of decision-making process, and so on. So yes, it is right that the changing bureaucracy is also including the change, the mindset, and also culture set, values of the bureaucrat itself, but also changing the culture and social values in the society, because the bureaucracy and society are interacting each other. They share the culture each other. So the bad or good bureaucracy So depend on the characteristic of society itself. So the building of educations into the good culture in the society also will also influence the culture in the bureaucracy. Yeah. So there are so many ideas, contemporary ideas to change the bureaucracy. What we understand as a global new public management movement. So using the tools, spirit of the private sector into the bureaucracy, so that the bureaucracy could more entrepreneur, yeah, more agile, transparent, accountable, and so on.
That's a very insightful thought from you, Professor Echo, on the relationship between bureaucracy and the society, which influence each other. Professor Echo, we want to read a question that we pick up from the Facebook page. You mentioned cultural change is required. What can governments do to change the mindset of the public servant?
This is very difficult question, you know. Changing the mindset, culture set, and mental model need a long time. Yeah. So, but I think we have to start by first is changing the education and also training system. Yeah, education since the elementary schools. Yeah, but also training and educations for civil servants. So I think we have to change from the traditional training and education for civil servant into the problem-based educations for the civil servants. Yeah, of course, this is not a short way, yeah, to change the cultures, but I believe that changing the culture should be starting from the elementary school. Yeah, from changing the society and also the children. The next generations. So we need maybe 20 or 25 years, yeah, to change the cultures. And based on the experience, maybe also in Malaysia, Singapore, South Korea, and also Japan. So we need longer time, yeah, to change the cultures. But we have to start it. Yeah. But also, I think it's very important that for example, ministers, senior executive services in the bureaucracy should be playing a role model for the civil servants. Yeah, so we have to create some system that protect the people abuse of power in the government and so on. So like whistleblowing system, yeah, bribery protection system, and so on. Yeah. But my experience when I was the vice minister, I created so-called agent of change or change of integrity, consists of young civil servants in the bureaucracy, in the ministry, that should show the new model, new integrity of bureaucracy in daily activity, yeah, rejecting bribery in the public services and so on. So training and educations for the community, for the civil servants, role model, creating system that avoid abuse of power in the bureaucracy, as well as creating agent of change and agent of integrity consists of a young civil servant will help and also enhance, strengthen the new model of culture in the bureaucracy. Thank you, Pak.
Thank you, Professor. It seems that it's a combination of continuous education as well as role modeling. Yeah? The follow-up question is from Mr. Nur Iskandar. The question reads, what are the main challenge for Indonesian government to reform its public sector structure organization? What are the key drivers? Does it require highest political intervention?
Yes.
How long does it need for government to reform in the case of Indonesia?
Yeah, I think the most problematic factors constraining reform of administrative system in Indonesia is the political interference into the bureaucracy, because the power of politics into the bureaucracy is very big. So the appointment of career civil servants still depend on the political power of the ministers, of the governors, of the head of district and mayor. Yeah. So of course we have tried to change the system by introducing so-called open selection system. So for the position director general and also director, we introduced since 2015 so-called open selection system, where the candidates should apply for the positions, and the candidates will be tested by assessment center, by through interview, and also by writing the paper to see how the visions and missions and strategy of the candidates and so on. So creating more transparent and accountable system, so we'll enhance and reduce the political interference into the bureaucracy in Indonesia. But this is not easy, because for more than 32 years, Indonesian bureaucracy is under the power of politics during Suharto era, and after reform in 1998, still there are political interference, but co-opted by multi-party system in Indonesia. So from the Golkar in the Orde Baru era during the Suharto into the multi-political party system. So the interference not only from the single party, but also from the multi-political party system. This is the most problematic factor we are facing now in Indonesia to improve the professionalism in the bureaucracy, but also changing the culture. So the colonial history in Indonesia has established so-called power culture. So not service delivery culture, but power cultures. So the bureaucracy has been created by the colonial regime, not to serve the citizen, but to co-opt, to interference, to be a hand of a colonial regime, in this society. This is the problem that exists, the culture problem that exists from colonial history of Indonesia, and also the authoritarian state during the Suharto, and the culture still exists. So we need time to change the culture itself. I think two problematic factors: political interference and also the existing culture. Thank you, Pak.
Professor, the next question is from Salma Ramli. She asks, as mentioned earlier, agile transformation is one of the prerequisites in a flat organization structure. In this situation, do strong leadership from the top is vital?
Yeah, that's right. I think the leadership play a very important role in the reform. So this is in the transition of generations, so-called the transition from baby boomers generation into the X generation to Y and Z generations. So overall, from the demographic view, we can see that the baby boomers generation only about 11%, I think, and Y and Z generation is 63% of the populations, at least in Indonesia. So they are still consist of two main generations, the baby boomers generation and also the Y and Z generation. So the X generation maybe it's about 29%. Yeah. So in the top positions, the baby boomers generations play a very important role because they are now leading the bureaucracy. Yeah. But with the character of mental model, all mental model, all this traditional culture, yeah, that exists already in the bureaucracy during the authoritarian state, also maybe during the past governments or regime. Yeah. So I think there are skills of future leader needed to create flat organizations. The leader that inspires and motivated others is very important. The leader that displays high integrity and honesty. Yeah. The leader that solves problem and analyze issues. Yeah. Drives for more productivity and results. So the leader that has capability to communicate with the politician, also political party, yeah. So so-called political management, how to interact with political parties and political interests, and transform and translate into the bureaucracy. The leader that collaborates and promote teamwork, build relationship with the society, yeah, multi-stakeholder managements. Yeah, the leader that has a capability to change has the capability in change management, yeah, and of course the leader who displays technical and professional expertise. I think leader is very important in the bureaucratic reform, in the national reform as whole. Yeah, I think. Yeah. Thank you, Pak.
You made a very good point, Professor, about the importance of leadership in bureaucratic reform, and you described the characteristic of the leaders that potentially lead such a successful reform. The question is, how do we make such leader, Professor? What?
Yeah, yeah. Okay, I think creating leaders should be starting by selecting the potential candidate into the leaders.
Okay.
Leaders. So the way we select the leaders play a very important role in creating good leaders. So I think we tried in Indonesia by selecting the best people from the best graduates from the best university. So to be posted into the senior executive services, yeah, because they are agent of change, who has authority to change, knowledge, and also a national interest. So selecting the best people into the highest ranking position is very important. Professional, open, competition-based, and also competence-based selection process. Second things is, of course, good training process. How to train the best selected people to have more capability on change management, risk management, strategic management, multi-stakeholder management, yeah, performance management, and so on. So the people who has capability to see for long future, so thinking ahead, the capability to compare, benchmark the improvement of governments and public services among the countries, among the state or local governments, but also the people who has capability to think continuously improvement, but always the good culture, yeah, incorruptibility, meritocracy, growth, yeah, prudent, and so on. So this is the improvement of the training program and process to establish, to create the good leader in the bureaucracy. But we still have a problem because the political leaders, for example, in Indonesia, they don't have any a good selection process and also training process, yeah, to be, for example, member of parliament, councillors, or to be a governor, mayor, and the ministers. So this is the gap between the political leaders and also the bureaucratic leaders. Yeah, yeah. I think this is two important things to create a better leader in the future: selection process and also the creating more better training programs for them. Yeah.
Professor, another question from the Facebook page. It reads, the four changes you mentioned may take different amount of time to be successfully implemented. I think the question refer to the four dimension that you mentioned earlier: structural, digital, culture, and regulatory reform. Can you share Indonesia's or any other country experience within your studies?
What is the questions? The cultural reform, yeah, Pak Johari.
The question reads the four changes
Yes.
that you mentioned, uh, namely structural, digital, cultural, and regulatory reforms,
Yes.
may take different amount of time to be successfully implemented.
Yes. Yes.
Can you share Indonesia's or any other country experience within your studies?
Yes. Thank you very much. Maybe I will explain based on two experience. Yeah. During my time as a vice minister and also more than 25 years active in a discussion with practitioner and also scholars in ASEAN countries, yeah. In ASEAN countries like Korea, Japan, also Malaysia, and also Singapore. So I think the reform should be focused in times. For example, in 3 or 5 years. So we improve the process of recruiting new civil servants. Yeah, for example, because if we can recruit the best talented people into the bureaucracy, it will be huge resources for us to be agent of change in the bureaucracy. So in 3 years, we improve, revise, install new system to have new recruitment system in Indonesia, yeah, in order to select the best candidate, the best graduates from the best university, and it's successful. So now Indonesia has a very good civil servant, young civil servants, as a capital for bureaucracy to be a change of agent of change. Yeah. Yeah. So how successful can be achieved depend on the commitment, depend on the focus of program, and depend on the detail of programs. Yeah. Normally we have many and also very ambitious program. Yeah. We try to change everything in the bureaucracy.
Right.
This is the so-called the ambitious program of reform.
Right.
But I propose that the program of reform should be focused on and prioritize on the 1 or 2 programmatic reform, like improving the selection process, so introducing performance-based payment or compensation and something like that. So in 3 or 5 years done, and then move to another programmatic reforms, something like that, Pak Johari. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor. The next question comes from Mr. Wahyudi. I reckon this question referring to the system in Indonesia. He says bureaucracy is headed by a minister, and most ministers are mostly political appointees. And often they require financial support from outside, and they need to recover the investment that they have made before they being appointed as a minister. Any feedback on that, Professor Eko?
Yeah, many scholars identified that administrative reform is political process. This is not administration process. So reforming the bureaucracy should including also the political party and political system reform. But this is not easy because we follow so-called the first winning theory.
Right.
It means that who win the election, they will has the power to change the system.
Right.
Yeah. What we can do is improve the quality of bureaucratic system to avoid, because you know, hand in hand, politic and the administrative system has interactions hand in hand. So what we can do is to reduce the political intervention into the bureaucracy by creating independent system. For example, before we introduce new law on Civil 7 in Indonesia, the selections process to be posted into the senior executive services depend on individually depend on the subordinate. So the ministers, the governors, and also the mayor. But we move into the more accountable, based on the competition and competency. So the political leaders cannot directly interference the selection process, and they have to wait until the bureaucratic process will end. For example, that they have 3 best candidates to be selected, 1 of 3. Yeah. So this is the combinations between the merit system in the bureaucracy process into the political process. So we reduce the political interest of the ministers and the governors by using the professionalism and also merit system into the bureaucracy. Yeah, this is what I can answer, but because we have to also revise the law of political system and political parties in Indonesia. Yeah.
If we get it right, Professor, there's still ways to manage it. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Right.
So because of the economic and political cost, transaction cost in Indonesia is very high. So they have to pay back the costs in the elections. Then bureaucracy and the businessman is like automatic teller machine. Yeah.
I like your analogies, Professor. Let us move to the next question, which is read from Miss Desi Haryanti. Her question: since the global condition is very dynamic, to what extent does flat organization fit to facing those dynamic, especially based on the experience many countries facing global pandemic COVID-19? To your knowledge, Professor, which country have done more successfully in handling it? The flat one or the more hierarchical one?
Yes, this is very important questions. Yeah, COVID-19 pandemic is just the latest in a growing list of disruptors confronting governments. Yeah, and this associated socio-economic crisis. Yeah. Raising many unknowns and imposing wrenching trade-offs. Yeah, the crises are global, but their impact are deeply local. So, if we comparing the bureaucratic system, in the world, so namely Weberian style and also new public management style. So I think some countries like Germany, Japan are characterized by Weberian style. So mostly characterized by Weberian style. So if we read article from Wolfgang Drexel's some Weberian style of bureaucracy, so implement more effective policy compared to new public management. So I think this is because of long traditions of German's bureaucracy based on the Rechtsstaat model, who were very efficient and effective for a long time ago. So German is very effective and efficient bureaucracy in the world because they implement the ideal type of Weberian consistently. Yeah, all the decision made by the government should be based on the rule, should be based on the efficient and effective indicators. Yeah, but if we pick up, for example, New Zealand is the second best country who can manage and solve the COVID-19 pandemic efficiently and also effectively. New Zealand is one country characterized by a strong new public management system. So I think if we compare German, Japan as a model of Weberian and also New Zealand as a model of new public management, these three countries implement and managing COVID-19 effectively and also efficiently. So we, in a conclusion, we can say that not depend on the Weberian or new public management's characters. Still, there are size and complexity in the country who will influence to manage COVID. For example, culture. Culture is very important. Culture of community. So compliant culture, discipline culture, very important in managing COVID-19. Of course, capability of bureaucracy is very important, but also the harmony of regulations is very important.
Right.
Yeah, and also how decentralization and also the relations between federal or central,
Right.
state or provincial, and also municipality is also very important. So culture, capability of bureaucracy, harmony of regulations,
Right.
but also the relations between central and local governments play very important role in managing COVID-19. Thank you, Pak.
That's a very thoughtful response, Professor. The way that we gather is that we shouldn't see the bureaucracy in isolation. There are other variables that work together at the same time. Yeah, Professor. Probably this is the last question. It comes from Iqbal. He says, "Salam, Professor. Thank you for your insight and sharing. My question is there a relationship between hierarchies or big bureaucracy and risk aversion in decision making?"
Yeah, of course. More hierarchy bureaucracy makes slower the decision making process. Yeah. So in Indonesia, we consist of 5 hierarchy. Yeah, S1 1, S1 2, S1 3, 4, and 5. So after having the letter, normally the Directorate General will send the letter to the S1 2. S1 2 will be delivered to S1 3, S1 4, and also S1 5. This it will take time. So the decision making process will be delayed with the higher hierarchy in the bureaucracy. So what we're trying in Indonesia is to delayering echelon 3 and 4 and 5. The goal is to make shorter the decision-making process, policy-making process in the bureaucracy, but also making professional civil servants through having the more competencies in doing their job, their assignments in the bureaucracy. I think, of course, now we are moving into the flat organizations, functional-based organizations, performance-oriented or performance-based organizational structure. Everybody has to ask their own selves what kind of role and contribution they have to achieve the performance indicator set in the organization, also in the national development programs. So everybody should ask their own selves,
Right.
kind of role and contribution I should deliver to the organizations. Thank you.
That's a very profound question, Professor. And I think it's also a tough question for everyone to ask about the roles and responsibility that they owe to an organization. Professor, we have come to the end of today's session. Would you like to offer some parting words, Professor?
Yeah, I think in the development program, there are two blocks. One is the content of development itself, the social development, political development, economic development, and so on. But another block is so-called necessary condition, enabling factors. So this is what we call bureaucracy, the engine of development. So far, I observe in some countries like Indonesia, maybe in some other ASEAN countries, they are focusing more on the development of the content of development, rejecting the importance of necessary condition and enabling factor in the bureaucracy. So what is necessary conditions? Regulations, human resource development, structure and business process, technology, yeah, and other ecosystem that would enable development program into the effective implementations of program and activities into the practice. So what I want to say that we have to balance between the block, the content of development, but also the block of bureaucracy as an enabling factor of development. This is very important. So that's why administrative reform is very important program in some countries like Korea, like China, also Japan, and also in Malaysia. I think Malaysia and Singapore is two good example for us in Indonesia, how bureaucratic reform make professionalism as foundations to make sure that all development program will be effectively implemented into the practice and the delivery of excellent public services into the citizens. This is my last comments. So I think we are very optimistic that Indonesia and also Malaysia and other countries in ASEAN will achieve their own development goals, and especially sustainable development goals. Thank you very much, Gary. Inshallah.
We would like to thank Professor Dr. Eko for spending time with us today. Professor, it is an excellent discussion that we had today. We really look forward to more collaboration with Professor Eko and University of Indonesia in the future. We also thank the participants for taking part. We value your views and feedback. We apologize for any shortcoming. Please follow us on social media for future session. Till we meet again, take care, stay safe, and thank you. Terima kasih banyak, Bapak. Sampai jumpa lagi.
Terima kasih. Thank you very much, Pak. Stay healthy for all of you. Ya.
Kami pun doa Bapak sihat-sihat selalu ya.
Alhamdulillah. Amin ya rabbal alamin. Thank you, Pak.
Assalamualaikum.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.